Well, she lasted just 44 days. Liz Truss has gone, and now we are facing a leadership contest for our third Prime Minister in 4 months. Can anyone lead the Conservative Party and the country right now? Should there be a general election? And what about people worrying about the real-life problems of how they're going to face their spiralling bills? Tonight's special programme comes from Cheltenham in Gloucestershire. It's a constituency that the Tories and the Lib Dems have been tussling over for decades. Welcome to Question Time from Cheltenham. Tonight's panel, from the government at least until next Friday, Graham Stuart. He's been MP for Beverley and Holderness in East Yorkshire since 2005 and has witnessed much of the recent chaos from the inside as Climate Minister. From Labour, Jess Phillips, the Birmingham MP, is Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding. Back in 2020, she resigned early in her campaign to become Labour leader and has written books about her life, politics and power. You may know her as the sister of Boris. Remember him? But the columnist and broadcaster Rachel Johnson wants a Green Lib Dem Labour coalition of sorts to replace the current government. Camilla Cavendish has made various contributions to public life. She headed up David Cameron's policy unit and Number 10 when he resigned in 2016. She's now a House of Lords crossbench peer and a columnist at the Financial Times. And once an advisor at the UK Treasury, Tony Danker is now Director General of the CBI. That means he leads an organisation representing nearly 200,000 businesses across the UK. Welcome to our panel, to our studio audience here in Cheltenham, chosen as always to represent how people have voted in the last election in England, as well as local elections, and we take into account sustained changes in polling as well. Very good to see you, and of course welcome to you at home. You can join the conversation the usual way on social media at BBC Question Time. Now, we choose our questions depending on what questions you ask. I have to say, the overall sense of your questions tonight is what on earth has just happened and what is going to happen now. So let's just deal with that for a moment, because it's been quite a day. Graham, now you're here from the government. What was it like in the last day or two, and when did you know that the game was up?
Well, it hasn't been easy, obviously, for anybody, and I'd like to apologise to the audience and the people of the country for the instability that there has been in our political life at a time when we need that stability more than ever. So and on the inside track, it hasn't been comfortable. We're obviously facing many very serious challenges. The Prime Minister resigned today and accepted responsibility.
When did you know that was going to happen? Or that it was very likely to happen?
When I heard that she was going to make a statement in Downing Street, I assumed, and then I was in the House of Commons. I went into the House of Commons tea room where I sat with my colleagues, and we went silent, watched the television and watched the announcement together.
So you had no idea before then?
I had no idea before then, and I'm a government minister and member of the cabinet, but that's the nature of these things.
And how are you feeling now?
I feel disappointed, I feel sad, I backed Liz Truss. Shocked, yeah. I guess shell-shocked to an extent. I backed Liz Truss. I worked with her at the Department for International Trade, where I thought she was a very strong performer. I worked with her at the Foreign Office. I think she's a good person. I think she's dedicated herself over many years to serving the people of this country. I'm extremely disappointed that her administration was not a success. And I think the responsibility on us all now, given the challenges we're facing, is to go forward, find a leader who can command a majority in the House of Commons and deliver the elected government that the people put in place in 2019.
Well, we'll get into that in a moment, but just let's take stock, because it has been one heck of a day. Jess Phillips.
Yeah, it has been one heck of a day in what has been one heck of a week, in what has been one heck of a couple of months, which it is just listening to Graham more in sorrow than in anger, and I understand why he has to present it like that. But the sort of I am sorry, which I'm sure he means from the bottom of his heart, it just simply doesn't wash. There is an absolute revolving door of chaos. We have had, I mean, in this year, we will have had 3 prime ministers in 12 years of Tory rule, where in my constituency and across the country, things are on their knees, no matter which service it is, literally from the menial of getting your passport right up to trying to get into an ambulance. I'm sorry, and we've got to get it right. It's just unbelievable. They have no mandate. The country is not the Tory party's fiefdom for them to just do whatever they want and say, oh, sorry, it didn't work out. Sorry, it didn't work out. People's mortgages have gone up. People's lives have been dramatically affected. Like, they're not fit to govern. They don't have a mandate. Whoever wins next Monday should go immediately to the country, because the country is desperate for change.
Okay. Now look, I want to hear what you think as well, so put your hands up if you've got a comment. But Rachel, it's rather fortuitous that you're on the panel this evening, because in the last couple of hours, there's talk now that perhaps your brother may stand again. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I mean, can I start by agreeing with Jess that, I mean, why don't they just keep the lectern in Downing Street and to save the poor lectern, the person who's in charge of the lectern, having to lug it in and out of the revolving door is what I think. I agree that it does feel as if the Tory party, after 12 years, 3 prime ministers in 1 year, however many chancellors, however many home secretaries, is a bit like our topsoil. I think it needs a period...
It's a bit like our topsoil.
Our topsoil, which is very depleted. It's exhausted, it's been overused, it's run out of all the vital ingredients it needs, actually, to sustain this country going forward. And I think it needs a period in opposition. It needs to go off and rewild itself gently. And as for my brother coming back, I can't bring you any news on that.
You must, come on, Rachel.
No,
you must have been texting at least.
Well, I have no comment on that, but...
So do you know?
I've got plenty of comments.
What I felt...
Rachel, wait a minute, let's clarify. Do you... No, Rachel, let's clarify. Do you actually know?
I know nothing. And about anything, as you'll discover in the course of the show. But it was when that chap saw my brother's face in his chicken korma, I'd realised that we'd reached the Turin shroud level of buyer's remorse, and people would be praying for the second coming soon. And lo, this morning, just after I was booked for question time, Liz Truss resigns, and of course you see all over Twitter. You know, we're not even talking about the Prime Minister who's on the way out. We're talking about the 55th Prime Minister returning to replace the 56th, and you think, help, where are we going with this? And I forgive, you know, I feel I should say sorry too, but I've had nothing to do with this. This is going to be done. Luckily, just one thing, I'm not, you said I wanted a Lib Lab Green coalition. I'd never actually said that, but when the words came out of
to our researcher.
I thought I was just answering a WhatsApp. But
well,
now you said it, I think it's a very good idea.
You think that's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea.
So we got it right. Yes, the man here. Yes, you.
I find it quite interesting to understand what it is that those close to Liz Truss felt made her fit for Prime Minister, because as a member of the public, a number of weeks ago, it's no surprise to me that she lasted 6 weeks. I remember listening to an interview with Liz Truss on the radio before the invasion of Ukraine, and she was asked a question a number of times about incursions and what it meant, and she couldn't answer the definition of what an incursion on Ukraine would mean. And I thought, you're the Foreign Secretary negotiating on our behalf on the world stage, and you can't answer this very simple question to one of Rachel's co-presenters on the radio. It wasn't Rachel, just someone on that station. And then people were saying, and then when Boris goes, because it became inevitable, Liz Truss is one of the favourites. And I'm sat there with my head in my hands thinking, is this really the person we believe to be suitable for Prime Minister to hold the highest office in our country? We believe she's suitable. And I actually feel really sorry for her, because she should never have been put close to that office, ever. She is not capable. I'm not saying she's not a good person. She was never capable of being Prime Minister. And what happened today is of absolutely zero surprise to me.
Okay. Man behind you there.
I've been following politics for near on 30 years, and I'm just absolutely gobsmacked. A couple of years ago, we were slating Donald Trump and his type of politics and thinking it would never happen here. The shenanigans over the last week have been incredible. And in fact, Andy Street, the mayor of Birmingham, said today, well, we've got one more chance, one more chance. I mean, the game is up. I actually think the Tory party are delirious. They're not just made mistakes, they're just delirious. And I think you'll find that the emotion here it speaks volumes.
Okay, well, we'll find out. Let's hear one more point before I go to the first question. The man at the back there, yes. With the dark suit, yes.
Me.
Yes, you on the right there.
Yeah.
Yes, you, sir. That's it, yeah. You got the microphone hanging over your head.
I just want to say, when politicians, when things suits them, they talk the way they want to go. Jess Phillips is saying we should go to the country, we should have an election. When in 2019, we were having all this difficulty with Brexit, and Boris wanted to have an election. People were opposing him. We don't vote for individuals here in this country. We've got a parliamentary system. We vote for a political party. They've got a mandate till 2024. So if the Tories are destroying themselves, let them destroy themselves. When 2024 comes, their mandate will be over, and we will have an election. So we shouldn't say things when it suits us and say another one when it doesn't suit us.
OK, well, look, that leads us on to our first question tonight, which is from Claire Howe. Let's hear from you.
The Tories seem unable to form a functioning government. Is it time that the country were given a general election?
And what do you think?
I would like a general election. It seems a long, long time since I feel that the government has been working for this country. I feel that the mandate that they had in 2019 is not relevant today. So much has happened, and I think it's time for us to have a say.
Tony.
Well, I understand the sentiment, but I would have one word of caution, right? We're in the middle of a debt crisis, cost of living crisis, growth crisis, and what we've had is instability. And instability has had a real impact. It's wrecked people's mortgages, it's wrecked people's businesses. And my fear now, particularly when the markets are sensitive, particularly when the Chancellor's just set out his plan to get a grip on the country, my fear now about a general election straight away would be that the instability goes deeper and deeper for longer and longer. So my own view would be, let's not have a general election this side of Christmas. Let's stabilise the country, stabilise people's businesses, mortgages and personal finances. But I'm sure the clamour will grow from the start of next year to do it as soon as possible. But I would say just be cautious about rushing to it. Right now, we're at a delicate point.
Camilla.
I hear what you say, Tony, and I think the new Chancellor has stabilised the markets, and I think he's tried to rebuild the relationships with the Bank of England and the OBR and the Treasury and the institutions that we have. But the Truss government has sacrificed the long-term financial predictability of this country. It's made us look like an emerging market. And the fact that the Conservatives are now intending to go into yet another leadership contest, apparently unable to even unite around one person again, really says to me that stability is not going to be provided by the Conservatives. So I think we do need a general election.
Camilla, let me ask you, because you were working inside Number 10 when David Cameron resigned back in 2016. I mean, there's a human drama going on here as well. I mean, Liz Truss, she came out, she put a smile on her face, she said a speech to the lectern, and then she skedaddled out of there, back into Number 10. When David Cameron resigned, I mean, how painful was that?
Well, I was thinking today that David Cameron called the EU referendum partly to settle the internal rifts within the Conservative Party, didn't he? Do you remember that? That went really well. Yeah, look, of course it's a human drama. I have enormous respect for people like Graham and Jess who are prepared to put themselves up for election. That requires a level of courage. But I'm really sorry to the guy in the front row you are right. Everyone knew what Liz Truss was like. Yeah. All the MPs who had worked with her knew what she was like. She set out her platform in the contest. Dreadful. And Rishi Sunak stood against her and he said, this is exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. These are your tax cuts are delusional. And she was not put in by the MPs. She was put in by a handful of Conservative Party members, and, you know, some of you may be in this room. A handful of people in this country were given the opportunity to choose the next Prime Minister. And I don't think we should go through that again. The Conservatives are now apparently intending to do the same thing again, but within a week. And there's a company called Tortoise Media, and it has signed up, as Conservative Party members, a tortoise, an American, and a Ukrainian, and they paid £25 each. And that tortoise and that Ukrainian and that American, who are all fictitious, by the way, are now eligible to vote in this election. So what does that say about our democracy? God. We need a general election because we cannot afford to go through that again.
Wow. Right, let's hear some more. There's a lot of hands up. Yes, the man there in the glass and the dark sweater.
Just on that, two things to that. I think we knew the same about Boris Johnson before he came into the office as well. But also, funnily enough, since her resignation, the pound has bounced back.
Yeah, it has.
Restabilising itself. Would it not be even better if we had a functional government?
You think we'd bounce back even stronger? Yes, the woman in the red top here at the front.
Well, the scenes in the House of Commons last night, the chaos in the lobbies. Charles Walker, the MP, spoke so eloquently about the state of the Conservative Party. I'm a lifelong Conservative, and I couldn't agree with him more. The fact Graham, I think, didn't know whether or not it was even a vote of no confidence, I think that's correct to say. The Conservative Party's gone from Rachel's brother, who I think, frankly, was a moral vacuum, and I honestly thought they couldn't come up with anyone worse. They found someone who trashed the economy, who's ruined the Conservative Party for a generation, and I hear what Tony says, but I can't see the alternative when the country and the Conservative Party are in the absolute state that they are.
Now, that's interesting you're saying that as a Conservative voter. Obviously, as I said at the beginning of the programme, we select you very carefully. As you know, you've all been individually spoken to, and we've gone through your social media and all sorts, to make sure that you represent the electoral picture of England, because that's the nation we're in. So more of you here voted Conservative than for any other single party, because we're reflecting Parliament at the moment. Let me just get a show of hands. It's not scientific, but it's just to get an idea. Who here would like a general election? Huge. Gosh, that's almost all of you. Not quite all of you, but almost all of you. What does that make you think, Graham?
Obviously, the situation today with the Prime Minister resigning has upset everyone, and people see...
But do you think you should give them a general election? And when you see that response, I say it's not scientific, but this is a very carefully selected audience.
You didn't ask the people who didn't want to have a general election, but...
No, I'm going to speak to those people as well. I'm just asking your... It's not, because I'm going to come to it.
No, no. What's your response to them? Well, we have under our constitution, we're not a presidential system. We have a parliamentary democracy. And under our system for hundreds of years, if you can command a majority in the House of Commons, and that's proved problematic for our recent leaders, but if you can command a majority in the House of Commons, it's your duty to govern in a parliamentary democracy. And we will, over the coming days, seek
governing. When's the governing going to start? I'd like to see some governing. There's been no governing going on for some years. I wasn't necessarily happy with much of the governing. But, you know, what we've got this weekend... So today, for example, an enormous and, years-long piece of work about child abuse has come to its end, and a report has come... A huge report saying that there is an epidemic of child abuse in our country, but instead of dealing with it, the government are currently, very unedifyingly, going through their Rolodexes and tweeting which one of the people that they're going to support. The NHS is in crisis. There's a crisis in every home, and it's whether Grant Shapps can use Excel, like that makes him some sort of amazing dude. I don't know. Like, when are you going to govern? Because for the past year, at least, it has been all you have governed is your own survival, and the country is on its knees.
May I Well, where we're actually at is that we have the lowest unemployment rate since 1974. We've led the world on net zero, both at home by cutting our emissions by more than any other major developed country in the world. We've led the world internationally with hosting COP20.
So you shouldn't mind putting yourselves to the public
Jess,
then, if you've got such a cracking record. Let them have a say.
Jess, I didn't interrupt you. And leading the world internationally at COP26 and moving from, under my colleague Alex Sharma, we've gone from 30% of the world's GDP covered by net zero to 90%. We have been governing, and we've seen the country through the pandemic with furlough and the other issues there. We're seeing the country through the pressures at the moment, which we're seeing elsewhere. You can see the crisis afflicting all sorts of other countries and globally, and we're making sure through the energy price guarantee and the energy prices bill, which I was part of the team.
Which is obviously considerably less than it was originally planned to be.
In terms of period, but not in terms of significant impact, and it means that it's protecting families and businesses up and down the country. We are governing, but I understand the anger, disappointment and frustration that people feel today. That doesn't change the constitutional position. It doesn't change the fact that Tony's right, that what we've actually got to do is make sure in a mature and statesmanlike way, and I know that's not how we've always conducted ourselves, we put the national interest first. And Jess can scoff all she likes, but
I'd like to see a statesman amongst you.
A general election is the very opposite of stability. It's instability.
For you, yeah.
I think that, hang on, Rachel, there's loads of hands up, so I'm going to come round to say keep your hands up, but Rachel, let's hear from you.
Well, I think that what we hear from Graham Stuart is the only thing that is actually uniting the Tory party is terror of a general election, because even if Margaret Thatcher came back reincarnated with Mother Teresa in her handbag, she could not win this election for the Tories now. And, I mean, don't forget that the most successful Tory politician of the moment is a lettuce that has outlasted Liz Truss in office. So just...
But actually, for those who are not aware, that's because a national newspaper, the Daily Star, I think, has been running a picture of a lettuce saying, could Liz Truss outlast the lettuce? Because obviously lettuce have famously short shelf lives. I think the lettuce did last long.
It won. The lettuce won. But what I would say to Jess is you can't have it both ways. You can't accuse the Tory party of not governing and then say, and we need a general election, because as we know, we've had a Scottish referendum 2015, EU referendum 2016, general election 2017, general election 2019, general election has to be held by January 2025. It will be a displacement activity that will deter any government, whether any government, any Prime Minister, any Chancellor from governing. So just bear that in mind. Be careful what you wish for. But I do tend to agree that we have come to a point of paralysis, and that I think the country is crying out to have some say in what happens next.
OK, well, there's lots of people want to say here, so let's get round you. Got two in here in the front. Yes, someone with blonde hair.
I think in line with Rachel Johnson's point there, I think possibly we have to ask ourselves, with the amount of political infighting that we've seen, which is quite frankly embarrassing and humiliating for us as a country, and with the amount of incompetence we've seen from our politicians, perhaps we need a little bit more than a general election. Perhaps we need, UK electoral reform, including proportional representation.
The EU have said we've got 7 years to save the planet, and all we're doing is political infighting. We've got children in our schools coming in starving and cold, and none of this is being addressed because all we're doing is talking about lettuces and who's going to outlast who. I mean, it's ridiculous. We need action, and we need it now. We need a general election.
OK. Man there in the blue stripy top.
To be honest, I just find the whole situation quite depressing. I think, as others have said, it's quite embarrassing. I mean, we're supposed to be a modern, progressive democracy. And, frankly, we've got a climate emergency, we've got the cost of living crisis, we've got countless other issues that, frankly, there's not enough time to list. And all of these people in the Cabinet, they just seem to be thinking about their own interests and their own jobs. They don't seem to understand that life exists outside of the Westminster bubble. There's a real world out there, and there are real struggles. And I think for the country to move forward, the only way to sort it out is to have that general election. They can't put in a second Prime Minister who has no mandate, who's unelected. We do live in a democracy. That's the key word. It's a democracy. Let the people decide.
Woman here in the front in the glasses.
What struck me when I saw the chaos yesterday with MPs in tears and that going on was, what if at that moment something had happened on the world stage? What if Putin had done something? What if there'd been some international crisis somewhere else? Are we really being told that those people would be able to pull themselves together and actually deal with that to the standard that we need? Because I wasn't convinced they would be able to.
And did that frighten you?
It did, really, because I thought, well, you know, the whole world's watching, but you think that could just be the moment. I mean, we know Ben Wallace has been over to Washington and things. We know things are very dicey. And you think at that moment, it would have just been chaos. We wouldn't have been able to make a suitable response. Our allies wouldn't have been able to rely on us. And that, I think, that's why I think we do need an election, because I just don't think they're capable of functioning to the standard we need.
Now, most of you put your hands up saying you did want a general election. A few of you didn't. So you don't want a general election. So let's just to get a different view. So yes, in the check shirt there.
I wouldn't advocate a general election at the moment. I think from the point that was made, we need a balance and we need to steady the markets. But the government at the moment, and I do agree with Graham, you have led a lot over the years across a lot of the different spectrums of politics, but now you are leading the way in higher mortgages, lower jobs, and all the things which affect people directly. So while I would advocate we should not have a general election, I don't see how we cannot.
So even though you don't want one, you think it's inevitable?
Yeah.
Anyone else who doesn't want a general election? I mean, it's quite hard to find you, but yes, the woman there in the brown jacket, yeah.
No, we certainly don't want a general election now, and I think we do not have a proper opposition anyway, and I think that's the problem. If we had a proper opposition, maybe the government would govern better.
Okay. I suspect we're going to be talking about what Labour might do if it came to a general election moment. Tony, you wanted to come in there.
Yeah, look, well, it looks like the audience has a pretty clear view about wanting a general election. The one thing I would say, I mean, I think we should wait, but the one thing I would say about the next few days, Graham, is that I think the Conservative Party probably have a last chance moment in the next few days to show a level of stability, grip, national interest first. If what we have in the next few days is
in the next few days, what we're going to have, surely, Tony, is because we've got until Monday, between now and Monday, to come up with two candidates. So there's going to be a sort of frantic amount of activity.
But let's see what happens, right? If we have a set of Conservative politicians engaged in internecine warfare about the kinds of arguments they've been having for the last 3 months, then that's a pretty bad sign, and maybe we should have that election sooner. If, however, the Conservative Party can put the country first, stability first, economy first, and do this in an orderly, quick fashion, then there may be a chance to have a bit of stability for a bit longer. So I think all eyes will be on behaviours this weekend in the Conservative Party.
OK. Well, look, I'm going to take another question. Listen, we're going to stay generally with this topic. I don't think that's any great surprise. But before I do, I just want to say that we will be in Dulwich in South London next week. And the week after that, we're in Horsham in the southeast of England. So if you would like to come and be part of the Question Time audience, go to the Question Time website. You can follow the instructions there and come and be part of our audience. And also, incidentally, a list of all the venues will be coming to our there, so you can see if it's going to be coming to your area and apply. Right, let's take another question now from Stella Jennard.
Yeah. Who, in the panel's opinion, is the best candidate to take over from Liz Truss?
Well, who do you think, Stella? Might as well ask you.
In my opinion, I think that it's time for the people to have their voices listened to
right.
again. So it's time for a general election, yeah.
We've got that message loud and clear. So, Rachel...
No. I knew you were going to come to me. It's so unfair.
It's not, because you're here and we're thrilled about it. So should it be Boris? You're saying you haven't spoken to him about it. I'm not sure I believe that, but I'm going to take your word for it.
I feel that's
Do you think
so
it should
unfair.
be him?
I feel it's so unfair to ask me because he may
think my
be a family
brother should be the
member,
Prime
but
Minister.
I'm not one of the 357 remaining Tory MPs who are going to decide who gets in the final
Yes, but
pair.
our audience are going to have a view, and they're not MPs either, so come on, let's hear your view.
I'm not a member of the Conservative Party, so I will not influence the outcome of this.
So you're not going to express a view?
Well,
I mean, that's what you're on this programme for, Rachel.
What do you want me to say?
Who is the best candidate?
Fiona, what would it make you really happy for me to say?
What you think? Who is the best candidate to replace Liz Truss? That's what Stella's asking.
That candidate, like when a debutante met a lot of met some beautiful. What are they called?
I'm totally wondering where you're going now.
You know, that her husband would emerge, a suitable husband would emerge. I'm sure we can all trust the Tory party, given recent events, to come up with the best candidate to lead the country forward and restore its reputation for economic competence and financial stability. Eh, Graham?
That's the idea, Rachel.
That's the plan.
So who do you think the best candidate is then, Graham? So you supported Grant Shapps originally in the last leadership contest, and then you switched to Liz Truss when he dropped out. So now Liz Truss has dropped out. Who do you support this time?
She resigned at lunchtime today.
Well, she resigned, of course, and Grant Shapps is now Home Secretary, but as far as
I haven't decided who I will support yet, but I entirely
You haven't
agree
got
with
long.
Tony.
You've got
No,
till
I
Monday.
agree, and you know, you see the audience, as you say, selected from across the political spectrum, and you can see the level of scepticism. And I agree with Tony, and I hope many of my colleagues are watching this programme, and they will get a very clear message from this. It is the behaviour of Conservative Party members, and the public is sceptical. And if we are to have any chance, and you need public consent, you need to win people over, and you can see where people are at the moment, then our behaviour is absolutely essential, and we need to behave in a way which inspires confidence and shows that we are capable of providing the stability and security and proper behaviour, as Tony put it, that this country needs if it's to be led through this period of extreme global challenge. We have a war raging in Europe. We have so many problems, and it's extraordinarily serious, and we need to take that seriously. And I hope everyone's watching, and I hope they will. And I hope they will learn to, if they have issues and frustrations, they can do it in front of a mirror or indeed to each other, but just start showing public discipline, decent behaviour, and restore public confidence, and then we will see.
That's all very well, but you must have a view. I mean, you've only got till...
Sorry, you want to push me on the...
I do, because you've only got till Monday.
Well, I've been mostly focused on the fact that was I going to turn up today for question time?
I think, in the nicest possible way, we did wonder, but we're thrilled that you're here. We're thrilled that you're
Mostly, I've had my friends texting me about the lions and what happened to the Christians thrown to the lions, etc. But I think it's very important to be here and to represent the government.
Seriously, we're very glad that you are. So who are you supporting then?
I can honestly say not only that I haven't announced, but I don't know yet.
Well, look, okay, so that's 2 don't know so far. My goodness, I mean, we're going to have the new PM by Monday or by Friday. Well, listen, we know you things about debutantes and things, Rachel, so let's
I know what would be the best story for the media and for the international,
I'm trying to get a genuine
international global interest. Trump would be thrilled. He'll think it means that he can return in 2024. You know, get the band back
if it's
together.
Your brother, you mean?
Yeah, of course. It's the big, the big dog back in town and all of that. But
Okay.
I just feel we should get the person who is right for the country.
Well, let's try and find out who people think that might be. Camilla.
Isn't it pretty obvious who it ought to be? I mean, on the one hand, you don't really want anyone who's arrogant enough to think they can do the job, which would mean that you go for Larry the cat, or Jeremy Hunt, who's actually quite, honourably said he will remain as Chancellor and stand aside. But given that we can't go for that, don't they have to go for Rishi Sunak? Because Rishi Sunak is the man who the MPs chose last time around, which was only a few weeks ago. Rishi Sunak is the man who took the fight to Liz Truss all the way through the campaign and said the difficult things and said that she was peddling fantasy economics. And
But
Rishi
don't forget, he
Sunak...
didn't manage to persuade Conservative members who, unless there is a kind of coronation, will have the final
But as I said earlier, I think that is part of the problem with this system. And by the way, just if you don't know, the Conservative Party created those rules in 1998 after it had suffered a landslide defeat. The people who created those electoral rules that let the membership vote never intended that to choose a prime minister. They were expecting that the members would choose the next leader of the party. They never intended that to be a prime minister. I really hope that the Conservatives, given they've only got a week and there are issues with online voting, will actually let the MPs decide. And I really hope the MPs will come together around Sunak. And if they don't, I think they are finished.
OK. Let's hand up. Yes, come here in the front.
Apart from yourself saying Rishi, I find it incredibly frustrating how you expect us to believe you and get behind you. Be like, okay,
believe
right.
who? You're talking to
Graham, sorry, and say, right, get behind you. one more chance. You can't even give a straight answer to a question. It's so frustrating as someone of, I don't want to say my generation, but it is. It's like, just give us a straight answer and just give people upfront and honest answers to what they want. Don't give us the skirting around the subject stuff. We don't want to hear that. We just want someone to go, do you know what? We messed up. This is what we're going to do. Then people might get behind you a little bit more and not call for an election and not get so frustrated with this wishy-washiness.
I'm going to go around the rest, but do you want to give a quick straight answer, or are you still sticking
Well,
to
I always
guns?
give straight answers.
No, not to this particular question.
If you mean I haven't said who I'm backing yet, because she resigned at lunchtime, I haven't spoken to anybody and I haven't decided yet. That's a pretty straight answer. I'm not hiding it. I'm not quietly texting my support for someone behind my back.
I'll tell you if he is.
I'd tell you if I did.
The man at the back in the tartan shirt.
I think after the way she dealt with Keir Starmer at the dispatch box on Monday afternoon, Penny Mordaunt would make an excellent Prime Minister.
Right, OK. She gets your vote. Man here in the blue jackets with the glasses.
What does it say about the Conservative Party that we're even talking about Boris Johnson coming back? It's unbelievable.
Well, what do you think it's...
Well, he left. He was a disgrace. And we're now putting forward, I'm hearing his name, as a potential candidate to lead our country again. It's just... I'm speechless.
Does anyone here want to see Boris Johnson coming back? Yes, you've put your hand up at the back. 4 of you, I think. Yes, the man in the red T-shirt with the blue top, yeah.
Personally, I think he was hounded out of the position before. Myself, I think the media have too much ability to turn things around with party politics. I would like to see him back, and, I mean, he's admitted his mistakes. He's a human being. That's my view. I would like him back.
And the fact that the Privileges Committee in Parliament is investigating him at the moment for allegations that he misled Parliament over the parties at Downing Street. So, in theory, if they found against him, he could become leader and then have to resign if they found he'd misled
That's not
Parliament.
as we speak today, is it?
No, they're investigating.
So,
of course, they haven't come to a conclusion. OK, but that doesn't put you off?
No.
OK, fair enough. Let me just hear a bit when I'll come back to Camilla. Yes, who was saying they did want Boris Johnson? Yes, you over there in the check shirt and the top, yes.
Graham spoke at the beginning about wanting someone who can command a majority in the Commons, and Jess says something about them needing a mandate, a proper mandate. There's only one man who's got both of those boxes ticked, and that's Boris Johnson. I think it's time for him to come back.
OK. Well, someone's hand is shot up there. Yes, in the blue shirt, yes.
Yeah, but that's the man who trashed the codes of conduct within Parliament. And Graham has said that we can't go ahead with an election immediately because we have a mandate for 5 years. So if the Tories are prepared to hide behind the rules that way, they should be hiding behind all of the rules, or respecting all of the rules. And I think Johnson trashed all the rules, and he should never be allowed to stand again.
The man behind you in the white shirt. Yes, you with your hand up. Yes, you with your hand up.
I think just the last few questions have been indicative of the fact that there are that many factions within the Tory party now. I don't see how you gather around anyone. And in a nutshell, that's why a mandate has to come from the country. You talked earlier, Graham, about duty. Surely your first duty is to the electorate.
Yeah. Tony.
Well, I'm incredibly lucky because the rules of my organisation say that I shouldn't be expressing a view, but I will give you 2 criteria. Number 1, they have to agree with Jeremy Hunt and Jeremy Hunt's plan, because at the moment, Jeremy Hunt's plan is keeping the country stable just about. So if they don't agree with Jeremy Hunt, they better explain in the next few days what their alternative plan is and whether or not that's going to cause the markets to react in the way they reacted, which pushed up all our mortgages and basically trashed some of our businesses. So that's criteria number 1.
Jeremy Hunt is effectively the kingmaker in all this.
Well, I think he is. Whether or not he's the kingmaker, I'm not sure. But I think if you're going to disagree with his approach, then that will cause instability for the country. So you better have an economic plan that's as good or as solid or as dependable. And I think the second criteria is you have to understand the economy. Cost of living, debt, growth crisis. That's where we are. Now, yes, it could be Rishi Sunak, of course, because he was Chancellor, but I don't know if he agrees with Jeremy Hunt. It might be Penny Mordaunt, but I think that becomes the test. So, look, I can't give you a name, but those are the tests. And if you don't pass those 2 tests at this point in British history, you shouldn't be Prime Minister.
OK. Woman at the back there, in the white top. Yes, you, with the blonde hair.
I don't think we've seen Jeremy Hunt's economic plan. All we've seen him do is reverse what was brought in a few weeks earlier. What is his economic plan?
Yeah,
there isn't one.
Yeah.
Man here in the back, Tisha.
Yeah, it's also frustrating. I mean, the question is, who would they pick for the next leader? It's just the best of a bad bunch. I mean, Graham there, just a few minutes ago at the beginning, he said how he was surprised that Liz Truss resigned. I mean, I think everyone in the country knew she was she had to resign. There was no choice. So, as far as I'm concerned, you know, whoever they pick, it's the best of a bad bunch. And good luck.
Were you really surprised?
I can't remember if I did say the word surprised. If I did, I'm sure you may be right. But I didn't know is all I mean.
Okay.
And obviously it wasn't out of a clear blue sky, was it? Given the situation. Sorry.
The fact that you're not even making a decision, you're sitting there now saying you don't know who you'll vote for on Monday to take over from Truss.
It's not true either.
I mean, that's amazing,
It's
isn't
not
it?
true.
Jess has just said it's not true.
I don't believe that it's true. I don't believe that. Some of your colleagues have already put themselves forward, some unedifyingly, like 12 minutes after Liz Truss had resigned.
It's quite something to say. You said you don't believe me. That's quite a strong thing. If I made my mind
quite
up,
strong,
Graham. Well, so am I, and I'm always entirely straightforward. If I'd made up my mind, I'd tell you I haven't. And for you to suggest that I would say that I hadn't when I had,
I just don't think that you can't tell the audience here who you wouldn't rule out or who you would rule in. Also, just to pick up on something that Tony said, I'm going to calm down when I'm talking to Tony.
Are you withdrawing that allegation or not?
No, we're not in the House of Commons now. I'm not withdrawing it. To pick up on something that Tony said, that this is Jeremy Hunt's plan, and it does feel a little bit like Jeremy Hunt is the kingmaker in all of this. Jeremy Hunt's plan to stabilise our country wasn't needed 5 weeks ago before Liz Truss became the leader and totally trashed our economy. So the idea that we're asking the country to hope for stability from the same people who just crashed the car, Jeremy Hunt, Penny Mordaunt, both of them suggested when they were running for leader just 7 weeks ago or whenever it was, they both floated having completely uncosted tax cuts as part of their routine. Only Rishi Sunak didn't. To be fair to Rishi Sunak, I'm not supporting Rishi Sunak. I tell you who I think should be who should replace Liz Truss, and that is quite obviously Keir Starmer.
Right, okay. Well, look, to that end, I'm just going to take the question, but I'll bring you back in, Camilla, I promise. We have another question here from Robert Seven. Robert, there you are.
Would Keir Starmer make a credible Prime Minister?
Right. So Tony, you were saying just now that as head of the CBI, you're not going to come down on one side or the other. But would business like to see a Keir Starmer government, from what you're hearing?
Look, I think Keir Starmer, of course, is a credible Prime Minister, right? I think he's a world away of where we were with Jeremy Corbyn. That's certainly the view of business people, probably the view of most of the public. So I think he's a credible Prime Minister. It doesn't mean he's the best Prime Minister. I think the big challenge for Labour now, and it builds on Jess's answer with a little bit more delicacy, is I think the game has just changed for Labour now, because what we have from the Labour Party is a big, bold, ambitious strategy for the country, a big, bold, ambitious economic strategy for the country, but they're going to have to do it without any money. And so I think the Labour Party are going to have to recalibrate now to think about how, given the state of the public finances, given the state of the economic crisis, what will be the prospectus from Labour now? Because Labour had a big, bold and expensive plan, in many respects a good one, with some questions for sure. But now I think they're going to have to think, right, what are we going to inherit, according to you all, maybe sooner rather than later? And what is our offer now? And so I actually think if I was both parties, and if I was in Keir Starmer's office, I would be burning the midnight oil right now to work out what of our plans can survive in this new debt and growth crisis that we're in, because I think we'll need a serious offer from Labour that's affordable for us to consider them to be credible.
Okay. Camilla.
I wanted to come back to Boris Johnson, the lion across the sea, the Cincinnatus of our age, the guy who, by the way, backed Liz Truss, and boy, maybe he thought that she would burnish his credentials to come back. And I just wanted to come back to you in the red shirt because you said he was handed out by the media. His own cabinet resigned because they felt he was unfit to govern. And if he was to come back, I'm not quite sure who he would be able to get back into his cabinet. So I think we really do have to be very, very careful, if I'm honest, before we go back to him. But Keir Starmer, I feel, has spent quite a lot of time vanquishing his hard left. I think, like Tony, there's quite a lot of policy which is unclear. I don't know what he'd actually do on day one. I don't know if you do. And so you're right. You guys have a huge job to do to recalibrate. But to be quite honest, I think quite a lot of the Hunt plan, in as far as we know what it is, and I accept that, you know, the outline is there, is not dissimilar to Rachel Reeves's plan. The energy price package is the same. Liz Truss introduced a 2-year energy price freeze, which would have left us as taxpayers beholden to the wholesale gas price. It was a completely blank cheque to everybody in this country, including the very richest, who I really don't believe need that level of help to heat very large houses. And I think whoever is in government in 6 months' time when that package comes to an end will have to produce a new package to help people at the bottom, but it will need to be targeted and it will need to better. And I think actually Labour have done more thinking about that than the Tories had. So I think if it is Keir Starmer, there's a lot of work to do, but the overtones are good, and the reality, back to Tony's point about stability, is if there's a different complexion of government and it's in for a long time, that means investors and businesses can at least start to grapple, rather than at the moment where a lot of investors are privately saying, we're really unsure what's happening in this country, we're going to wait for an election, we're going to wait for a Labour government to see what it's going to do. And I think that is the problem, that's where we are.
Rachel.
A lot of good sense spoken by Camilla. I mean, she's right to point out that the economic fundamentals aren't going to be that different whether we go forward after 2025 under a Tory or a Labour Prime Minister. And Keir Starmer's best hope is to see the Tory party completely implode further and actually keep his economic cards quite close to his chest because, as you point out, you know, the energy price cap, the windfall tax, they've already been snaffled up by the Tory party and they've been popular. So he doesn't, but he, again, you know, what is there left for him to do? I mean,
but would he make a credible Prime Minister? That's the question.
He could cap bankers' bonuses again. He could place a windfall tax on banks, which would probably impact badly London, you know, financial centre status, all the rest of it. Would he make a credible Prime Minister? Of course he would. Of course he would. He looks like a Prime Minister. He sounds like a Prime Minister. He is at the moment, he is Prime Minister in waiting as the polls stand, isn't he? He's what, 30 points ahead. So all he's 31. Got to do, 31, all he's got to do, as far as I can see, is not spook the markets anymore. Let's face it. I mean, when the next Prime Minister comes in, he can get rid of Jeremy Hunt if he or she so desires. But the real boss is the bond markets. So that's what Keir's got to look at when he lays out, which he will, his economic plan and his manifesto going into the next election.
And just to be clear, you would welcome either a Labour government or some kind of coalition of sorts?
I don't know what I welcome at this point. I mean, don't we all sort of feel that, well, beyond the last 6 years, I think what we're not talking about yet again is the elephant in the room. 2016, who was it who said David Cameron called the referendum? The last 4 Tory Prime Ministers have had to resign because the party became ungovernable, because it divided Leave and Remain. Now the Tory party is split between Borisites and Rishiites, between those who want a centre-left economic plan that Jeremy Hunt has, versus the Trussites who wanted a hard-right libertarian economic plan that Liz Truss wanted, which didn't work, which spooked the bond markets. So the Tory party is split irreparably, as far as I can see. Labour's job is not to split the same way, and Keir's task ahead is to keep the party together so it doesn't split hard left, centre left, as far as I can see. Am I right, Jess?
Yeah, but I don't think it will.
Okay, let's hear from you. You had your hand up here.
I'm a veteran and I listened to parliamentary questions yesterday. I heard brinkmanship, sniping, backslapping on both sides of the political spectrum. I think both of the main parties need to clean up their act and to serve us better. We've got some big ticket items. Russia and China are a major threat. And the behaviour I've just seen this evening, sniping and tit-for-tat behaviour, has no place anymore. We need some serious leadership.
You're nodding your head at that, sir, in the cream top. Yes, you, with the glass.
It's not green, it's pink.
It's
No, it's white. What I'd like to know, what are the opinions of the panel on the reversal of the business rates?
Well, the question at the moment we're dealing with is, would Keir
That's my
Starmer make a
question.
credible Prime Minister? So I just wonder, what do you think of that?
We've had too many.
So we should... what does that mean?
Sorry, what did you say?
Would Keir Starmer make a credible Prime Minister? That
Who
was
is
the
he?
question we did.
Who's Keir Starmer?
OK, that probably tells us what your thoughts are. All right.
That question's for you, actually.
Graham.
Yeah.
Well, Keir Starmer, and Labour is ahead in the opinion polls, but we are facing his programme is, in terms of its fiscal impact, more radical than the steps that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng put forward, which were looking to get the incentives, drive economic growth. The cost of decarbonisation, for instance, and I'm the climate change minister, by 2030 are unimaginably large as well as undeliverable. For the most part, Keir Starmer has focused on keeping stopping the divides within his own party, which is something you've got to do. But of course, his party, he was at the last election trying to get Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. So it's quite from trying to make him Prime Minister to saying he's the vanquisher of the left is a fairly extraordinary journey. And there is none of the work that went in. If you look back, one of the best political books ever was Unfinished Revolution. It was by the pollster for Tony Blair, Philip Gould. And it tells the story of the build-up of the team around Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, as they sought to overturn the Tories after their surprise win in '92. And the amount of work that went in, the policy development, the thinking. And it is, and clearly we're not in the... in terms of our governance of ourselves, as opposed to, I think, the policy platform of the governing of the country, are not in the place that we should be. But I'm not sure that Keir Starmer, who has almost deliberately failed to come forward with policy in many areas, but where he has, it's actually totally unaffordable and unrealistic because he wants to appeal to the crowd and just keep his team together. One of the things we need to do now, given that they're ahead in the opinion polls, is subject them to the same scrutiny that you subject the Tory programme to.
The question you're hearing from Tony, for example, is what is Labour's respect? Is Camilla saying, what are you going to do on day one? I appreciate we are potentially a way out from a general election. Yeah. But nonetheless, these are questions that are increasingly...
She has no idea, because neither does he.
No, but I'm going to take a humble, appreciation of the lady at the front, and I'm going to try not to snipe with Graham. I apologise.
So what would you do?
Sorry, yes.
What would you do? I mean, the question is, would Keir Starmer...
stop myself from sniping at Graham.
Would Keir Starmer make a credible Prime Minister? Obviously, you think that yes.
Of course.
But in terms of the wider question, what would Labour actually do?
The reality of the situation on day one is that I don't know what tomorrow looks like. To the lady in the audience who said, I don't know what Jeremy Hunt's plan is. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I have no idea, and neither does anyone in the Labour Party or anyone in the government currently know what the economic situation is. I find it absolutely flabbergasting to listen to government ministers, as we have just heard, talking about how what the Labour Party had suggested would totally crash the economy after they have just totally crashed the economy. I find that absolutely flabbergasting.
But you know you're going to inherit a lot of... should you win a general election, you know you'll inherit a lot of debt. And obviously what you can't say is, we didn't know what the situation was going to be, so we worked it out once we got in office. Clearly you're going to be doing it before
I don't even know what the OBR forecast is yet, because both this Chancellor and the last one, and maybe there's going to be another one next week, have failed to share it with anybody. So I literally do not know. And for me to sit here and make spending plans without even the forecasts in front of us is exactly what has just got us into the problem that we are in as a country.
We're going to be talking
However,
50 million, 70 million, it's going to be massive.
What I will say is that obviously, as a Labour Party member, I mean, the Labour Party has put out a number of different policies, some of which is based on new taxes around getting rid of non-dom status, for example, which they are suggesting will fund things like a massive recruitment in the NHS, which has failed to recruit over the last 12 years and has left the NHS in total crisis. So they have put out a prospectus, and what they have said is that they will never use anything other than they will always spend within their means and only borrow to invest. We will never borrow to give rich people tax cuts. On this, you have my word. Let's see what happens over the weekend and whether you can get that other people's word on that over this weekend. I don't mean from the Labour Party, obviously. The situation with the Labour Party is obviously I want to come in. I've spent my life, and I spend every single day as a constituency MP watching services that have been totally degraded, and I want a moon on a stick for those services. And the criticism that the Labour Party always gets is, oh, it's just spend, 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 because, you know, you've got to have some patter, even though you've been in government for 12 years. But the situation that we're going to find ourselves in is not one that I would want. And it won't be a matter of even the first day of a Labour government, or we always talk about like the first 100 days or the first 1,000 days. And in the first 100 days or 1,000 days, Tony Blair came up with the minimum wage, had done all sorts of things. We're not in that situation thanks to Liz Truss. We would have been having I would have given a different answer had this been 5 weeks ago, when I was actually booked to come on Question Time before Liz Truss became the Prime Minister. So I've just looked out that I got on today. I booked 6 weeks ago to come on. I would have given you a different answer. The Labour Party knows that it is going to not be able to do some of the... I would be putting women's refuges in, you know, because that is the area of my concern. Every single child abuse victim that has been implicated today, I would be trying to offer them something. The reality of the situation is I don't know what I'm going to be left with, but what I promise is that we will be fiscally responsible, which Liz Truss has failed to do.
Right, we've got about a minute left, 30 seconds left. Let's just see if I can get a couple of points in. Yes, the man there in the blue top, you've got the microphone of your head there, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, just to take us back to the question, is Keir Starmer credible? I think he is, but just to be more credible, surely he needs to pin his colours to the mast, be honest with the public and say, look, we've got the NHS and other public services in a terrible state. We need to raise more money through taxation. And somebody has to pay for that. Windfall taxes. Taxes should go up for the richer people in society who can afford to pay it. And be a bit more honest. Rishi Sunak started to say that. The Telegraph and the Mail took the Tory membership down the Liz Truss route, as we know. And look what's happened. Everybody was warned. So, yeah, he can be credible, but he needs to be absolutely honest with the public.
OK. We've got about 20 seconds left. Yes, the man next to you in the glasses.
Yeah. I don't think Keir Starmer should be... obviously put as Prime Minister. I think we should stick with Conservative government as we've got, and whoever the new leader is, whether it be Penny Mordaunt or Rishi Sunak, we should stick with them. If we got into a Labour government, for example, Jess, you know, who's to say in 2 weeks' time when you get into government that we don't go down this whole cycle again?
Right, my goodness.
It was them.
Yes,
just FYI, it's them that are revolving.
Take your point, thank you.
Us.
I'm afraid our time is up. Have you enjoyed it? Are you glad you came? I mean, my goodness, what a day. I have to say thank you so much. Thank you to the panel for coming this evening. Thank you to all of you for coming here to Cheltenham tonight. And, of course, thank you to you at home for watching. That is it from Question Time Cheltenham. Who knows where we're going to be, what we're talking about next week? We'll find out. See you next week. Bye-bye.